So, about 3 years ago, yes, it was during the time of my journey. Of course, I was suffering and alone, but I still had my daughters, which of course gave me great joy to actually raise them after time in joint custody. But yes, it was a miserable time because my ministry is a ministry of sorrow and humiliation. I remember, I lived in Shom, and one day I drove to Jerusalem and just to buy used books. Of course, used books. If you want to buy used books, the best place is the center of Jerusalem, or arguably Tel Aviv, center of Tel Aviv, but not Shom, of course. So I bought several books, and I remember I parked in Chenyon Rajuan. It's near Agrippas, and I bought several books. I was in a very bad mood. I just sat in the car in the Chenyon Rajuan, like in a public parking, and I was in such a bad mood. And just, I wanted help from God. And I've done something that I've done quite a bit, during this time and after that, even though in the last year or so I'm doing it less than before, even though I still do it, but just probably I do it much less because I do not live in my apartment since August, and I don't have all my books. It's just, to open a book semi-randomly and choose the book semi-randomly or just open it in the page. As you know, it's kind of the most, maybe the most well-known type of divination, at least in our time, type of divination, to open and just, you read, it's kind of like a message, and the message from divine source. So, many people, some people are doing it with the Bible, and some people are if they are like a Hasidei Chabad, they're doing it with a Got Moran or whatever, all sort of like texts. But it's known all over the globe. It's kind of the divination, and I've done it quite a bit. Of course, now I don't have books, so I can't do it. And certainly, I don't have, like, all my books are in storage, and almost all of it. So if you ask, what kind of books I've used, so this answer is every single book that I have in my library. Yes, certainly the Bible, but also any other book. And when you are, it's a real, when you are at the bottom of the barrel, as they say, like, under arrest, as not house arrest, but real arrest, like in prison, which, I've had several of these experiences during the last 7 months, and you have nothing besides, maybe a brochure, that, is, handed, like, freely in synagogues and also in prison, religious, and it's mostly for kids, actually, like, and maybe a little bit for adults, but discussing the Parshat Shavua, and, all sort of, like, Masiot, like, tales, like, all sort of tales from the Jewish tradition, which is, incredibly low quality, but, this is, when you are, like, under arrest and there is nothing in the cell besides this piece of text, you actually do it even with this text, because, that's what you have. Just to say, any text can actually be used. It's a kind of way, maybe I'm doing it less during the last 8 months or even 1 year, not only because I don't have my books with me, but maybe because I think that I feel closer to God. I think much closer to God, and even though my sorrows and my tortures are only amplified all the time, I kind of like needed less than in the past. But during the journey, and specifically during the first year or 2 years, I was so lost. It was so difficult. To study. the secret history, your own history, the history of Zionism, the secret of, everything around you, and the secret, the language of the cherubs, the symbolic language. So I sat in Chanon Rajuan, like in the Rajuan parking lot, underground, of course, and I was so devastated. I felt so bad, and so I picked a book. Actually, it wasn't one of the books that I bought. For some reason, I had two volumes of Plato's translation. The famous Plato. All of Plato's, like the dialogues, were translated by Libes, I think. Yes. Some, a little bit of it was translated again. Later, but by presumably more modern, like a translator. But this is the canonical translation, and it contains all the dialogues. So I've had the first and the second volumes, and I don't even remember what it. It was, for some reason, it was in the car. Maybe I don't know. I don't really remember why. I didn't buy it. Like, I don't think that I bought it like then, because I've had it before. You can never know what you can find in your car. Sometimes you just you have like Plato's dialogues in your car. Makes sense, I guess. And I don't even remember what dialogue was it. I think it was from the Politeia, actually. And the Politeia is, takes like a whole volume out of the 4 that, because it's very, very big one. But maybe it was, from another dialogue. And just I opened it like randomly, and I felt like on the passage, that Socrates speaks, and Socrates speaks, and it gave me such, such encouragement. Such a boost in my morale. So after that, I drove home with with my spirit significantly uplifted, and many times an uplifting message is not necessarily something that tells you everything is going to be alright. Don't worry, not at all. Mostly it's not that way. It is not for me. An uplifting message is something that shed lights on your circumstances, shed lights on your situation, and it can be something that is actually very dark many times. But many times, the message that is very dark can actually uplift your soul, because you found like an amplitude, like an echo to your own situation. So you understand, okay, you are not alone in this world. God is with you, but also, in addition to God, of course, God does not need any additions. But yes, you understand, that your situation, however peculiar it contains many aspects that were not completely peculiar or unique. That, yes, your situation is extremely unique, but, many things are actually not unique to you. Like several specific aspects. So I don't remember what was the dialogue. Maybe an expert on Plato can identify the dialogue. And Socrates speaks, and he says something like, of course I will paraphrase and make it much shorter. He tells it like in a more elaborate way and a very nice way, literary way. But he said, the state wants you, or whatever anonymous listener that it is, or kind of like an abstract listener, the state wants you to think that you didn't have a father and a mother and background, and that you were actually created from the dead material of the earth, of the state itself, and the state actually created you from this material. That's what the state wants you to think. That you are a product of dead material, tools and raw materials that the state itself manufactured, like sort of like craftsmanship. and that your memories are just, I mean, an illusion. Like, I mean, like the implanted memories of a replicant, or Socrates didn't mention replicants and implanted memories, but this is like, this is my this is, I mean, my addition to this paragraph. But no, you were not created from dead material or from raw material, and you were not created by the state. You had mother and father and background and memories. And it hit me so close to my heart because during the time, during those years, like the first years of my journey, I felt that I'm under severe pressure to nullify my past, to admit that no, my memories are not my memories, my past is not my past, whatever I know is not, I mean, reality, but I'm kind of like an illusion, and I'm a product of the state and all the property of the state. But no, this is not true. I have a past, I have a background, and this does not really, I mean, and the state did not create me, and I'm not a property of the state. This really uplifted my spirit. Funny, they say that, I mean, well, many people, most, I mean, probably famously Karl Popper, in the Open Society and Its Enemies, I mean, placed Plato like as the father of totalitarianism, totalitarianism means with Marx. And sometimes it looks like that kind of like, that Plato, I mean, prescribed like a kind of like, I mean, a perfect politeia. But this is, I mean, one paragraph of Plato that is completely anti-totalitarian. And of course, it enlightened my spirit. I mean, the cleaning machine is again cleaning this street for the second time today, I mean, this morning, because it makes a lot of noise and they like to create noise. I'm considering, should I like open the window and put a spell on this machine, or maybe it doesn't worth my attention. You know, I mentioned that almost always you use 2 containers for your creations, but sometimes you only use 1, or maybe even more than 2. Like an example of this one container is the container with the burning demons that I've fired, like I put fire on it like in the last this night, and also several nights ago. This one, it's currently I placed it like outside after I took the samples and that I've reviewed this last night. Generally, when you use 2 containers, the type of the containers dictate the bicycle. Of course, if it's a red container, it says, it dictates that the neurons should do whatever they do on the container according to the symbolic language and other materials, and all sort of I would say parameters, and they should do it like in the body of humans, not because they have red blood. This is a mistake, because I also have red blood. Because they were created from the earth, Adama. They created from the dirt. That's why you are sick. The Homo sapiens are signified by the red color. And of course there is, what kind of containers, the relationship to a container is the whole, Torah Shlema, like a whole Torah, it's a huge issue, and I've spoken about it a lot in the past. But when you have only one container, when you use only one container, What does it mean? It means that the other container is actually a person that that is close by, that is getting close. You use it when you don't want to actually inflict this kind of basically on all the bodies that are signified by the nature of the container, but only on one body that is close to it. I can do it, it could be my own body if I'm using container that signify the cherubs. But it could be a body of anyone that comes near the window in this kind of creation. Like one container is the one that that have with the burning demons and animals. And the other one is every piece of shit, Homo sapiens, that comes near this window to terrorize me. But let's continue. And I'll try not to pay too much attention to the interruptions from the piece of shits Israelis. So yeah, one of the wars that I had, I fought during these years, is the war of the memory. The war that how to combat this state that tries to tell you you are not what you think you are our creation. Because I'm not. I was born in 1984, and my memories are my memories. My childhood photographs are my childhood photographs. I am not a replicant, and no memories were implanted in me. But this is a fight, because everybody tells you otherwise. And moreover, you understand that you need to reconstruct your own history, because much of it is not what you thought it was. But at the same time, your memories are true. So there is a duality of both trying to latch into, to hold your memories, to hold your childhood, to hold your values that you, very close to you, because they are the essence of your character. And even if many parts of it were actually some kind of like a charade or an illusion, it's still, these are an illusion, not because I wasn't there, but because many people belong to the intelligence community, and they what they do is manipulation all the time, and they didn't start it right now. That's what they've done long before I was born. But even with those manipulations, with this layer of manipulation, your upbringing is still your upbringing, your values are still your values, and your memories are still your memories. Yes, I've spoken a lot about my childhood and my family during the last 4 years in various documentation channels. And I've said many contradictory things, because that's the only way to actually get to the truth. To use many metaphors, and many of it was contradictory. But now, what I will do now is try to actually give you, maybe it will be a long one, I don't know. It wouldn't be as long as the bicycle series, because we don't need that much of explanation, like of background stuff, but I don't know how long it's going to be. I just speak from the heart without a plan, as always. But it will be something, it will be a series of videos. I don't know if a short series or a long one, that the subject will be me, Noam David, Noam Yaakov David. And it requires reconstruction of many events. But mostly, and I will be extremely honest, mostly the thing that should be reconstructed in the most painful way, but it's not a new thing. It's something that I'm doing for many years, is the understanding that my childhood was actually much less happier and normative than I try to tell myself, and also to tell my audience in this documentation, because it wasn't. There were many happy moments, and I think that essentially I grew up as a normal human being, normal Homo sapiens, and this gave me many powers, gave me a backbone of values, and gave me many powers, and most importantly, it gave me the ability to actually speak with you. Because if without this kind of childhood and upbringing, you wouldn't be able to identify with me, I wouldn't be able to identify with you. And since early in my blogging, since 2019, I spoke a lot about things like, about artifacts of popular culture, books that I've read when I was young, mostly during the early 90s. This is from 90 to 95. This is the era that I focused like the most, like in those writings. Things like Zelda, the NES game. And the colonization, the microprose games like Civilization, Colonization, Transport Tycoon, and lots of like other stuff that I've read or listened or played. And much of it was to say, yes, I'm like you. I had a childhood that is comparable to you, to a person like you, wherever you are. Kind of like the way that I imagine a person. Of course, mostly, my listeners are only come from the intelligence community, and I understand it. It's not. I do not say that every child on this earth like played Zelda and Contra and read the Wizard of Oz but yes, I think that much of it, you, my listeners, right now, that belong to the intelligence communities can actually identify with. And a lot of it was to say, I am like you. I had a childhood, and it was kind of, in many ways, very normal childhood. And this gives me the ability to identify with you, to speak with you as a human being, as an Homo sapiens, even though, of course, I'm not an Homo sapiens. Still, major part of this reconstruction was not only, of course, a huge part was to understand how my childhood and my nature relates to the Titan saga and to my very, very special nature as a cherub, and to my mission, to my connection to God and to my mission on earth. But yes, another major part was to confront reality, and I'm not the first person to confront this kind of reality. It's actually something that many people actually confront during their life, earlier in their life or maybe later in their life. I'm soon to be 40. I was born January 7, 1984. So many people confront this kind of reality, the understanding that it wasn't normative and it wasn't happy, not as they like it to say, to imagine. Many people actually recall traumatic events like sexual abuse that completely changes the way that they understand their own family and childhood. This is not my own case, not at all. I did not like recall or like some suppressed memory or things like that. All the memories are that I will share with you are, and that are part of my background, are in the consciousness level. And I have no memory of sexual abuse, and probably because I wasn't sexually abused as a child or a teenager. Of course, things that happened to me later in my life by the cruel titans of this land, and is of course sexually abused, but an abuse in the workplace, and it's horrible abuse in the workplace. But no, I have no memory of like these traumatic events from my childhood, probably because it didn't happen. But I had to face memories that I never forgot these memories of all sorts of things that from very early childhood up until I was like 18 or 19 when I enlisted to the military, and I had to face these events that they were always on the surface level, but I always told myself, you need to forgive these people, because you need to forgive these people. You need to forgive your parents. Since very early, I mean, in my life, I had this kind of notion that I need to forgive my parents because they are children. And this, I mean, it's not a new thing. I almost can't remember any other state of mind. And certainly when I was 6 years old, when I was younger than my own daughters now, I mean, I already had this kind of notion that I need to forgive my mother and father because presumably they don't understand what they are doing. And sometimes, I mean, they need to be the grown up because they are in some way cruel children, because that's what they were and that's what they still are. This is typical to people of the Israeli intelligence. Of course, not that it gives you me or anyone else that had to grow up with such parents any comfort. So yes, part of this reconstruction is to understand that my parents were always I wouldn't say insane, but certainly had severe personal, I would say, personal like, I mean, not as a type 2, I mean, I don't even remember what's the name of, like, הפרעת אישיות, I mean, personality disorder, type 2, I mean, it's the 4 type 2 personality disorders are so, I mean, so manifestly, I mean, there in both of my parents. Actually, not the most common one, which is the bipolar, I think, disorder. This is the most common, but actually not that one, but the 3 other ones, the narcissistics and the antisocial, and above all, the one that is least known, but is for certain the most relevant in the case of both of my parents, the histrionic, I think, disorder. It is the least known, but it's kind of like, I mean, it's the disorder of a person that's always act like he's kind of like he's on a stage, like he's performing on a stage. And this only became more and more, in the case of my father, I mean, it became more and more ridiculously, I mean, harsh when the years passed. But he always had it. And this kind of like, I mean, it's not funny at all. It's a huge, I mean, it's very terrifying disorder. And maybe it's something that, I mean, again, characterizes people of the Israeli intelligence because they like to think of themselves as kind of like in a show or in a movie all their life. I will get back to it probably later. But it was important for me to say right now, yes, part of this reconstruction is to understand that, I mean, many of the things that you remember, not kind of like, I mean, suppressed memories, are completely not normal, abnormal and cruel. But there were also many good memories, and we should speak about those as well. Of course, the subject of this, I mean, the purpose of this series is not to recall all sorts of memories. I've done it in the past. The subject is to give you my origin story. So I will not speak about everything that I remember from my childhood, of course. What I will do is to construct probably in kind of like artificial way, and certainly in a way that will be inclined to be more dramatic, because you already understand that, I mean, that's how I do it. That's how I did it in the bicycle series, and I will do it here as well. It's important for me to give that kind of like dramatic structure to this kind of series. Not just, I mean, because I want this series to be more palatable. As I said many times, the most important thing is the truth. I want to be as truthful as possible, and I don't want to, it's not like a main objective that you will enjoy this series. The reason for the importance of dramatization is, as I said many times before, including in the previous series of the bicycle, that many times it gives you actually, I mean, the dramatization actually gives the continuum, the continuum of events, the non-stop continuum of events. It gives it purpose or rationalization, and many times it actually conveyed the truth in a better way if it were not presented in dramatized way. In one of the previous videos, I've said that, unlike the bicycle series here, I will try to be linear. Chronological is the correct term. But it will probably not be like that. I will not be chronological. We will deal with things that started on the 1920s and up until today. And it's not a correct way to do it chronologically. Only chronologically. Because this is not the way that I actually understood reality, as you understand. My own way that I understood reality was not in a chronological way, with like more and more iteration of reconstructions of the past. And this should also be the way that I will actually present things to you. Not exactly in the same way that I discovered the past or, gave it a form or substance. But it is important to jump back and forth in time, at least sometimes. Not for dramatic, purposes, and not because I like to be like, postmodern or whatever. But because this kind of changes in time, I believe, are necessary to present truth as I understand it. Also, it should be said that I don't find like, the first protagonist of this series will be my late grandfather, Yaakov Choropoulos. And his days in Greece, in Yanina, or Ioannina as they call it in the English form, but he always called the city Yanina. But I don't think that it should be, and he's a very important figure, and it was very dear to me, and still very dear to me. An incredibly, a great man, really a great man. So I should speak about him and also about my his wife, which is still alive, my grandmother, Batya Choropoulos. But it doesn't make sense, and it's only an example of the nonlinear form, to speak too much about these people. When you don't understand why you need to know these things. Because again, this is my origin story, and ultimately it's about me. So I don't think that it's in place to start with saying everything that I know about the childhood and the early days, the early years of these two people, of my grandfather, if you don't understand why it's important. It's just like kind of like a tedious. It will be just kind of like a tedious exposition. It makes much more sense, also, to speak about the man and his childhood, but not too much. But later, to actually get back to maybe the earlier years and to give you more background when you will actually understand why it's important. This is just an example why the non-linear structure is actually the one that makes more sense many times, and also in the case of this origin story. I call this series the Ziggurat of Ur. And maybe later I will explain why. I should just say that from very early age, I've read about, I learned about the ziggurat structures, and they captivated my mind. It was one of the things that captivated my mind since very early childhood. And during the last year or 2 years, I understand to a greater extent, the importance of the ziggurat structure and the Ziggurat of Ur. Of course, in a symbolic way. Not like as a place where presumably there is a Stargate. That is not the issue. The issue is the symbolic mythology behind the Ziggurat of Ur, and the importance of the Near East mythology to my own life. Again, not only the Bible, but also the Near East mythology. I called my species the cherubs, and the cherubs are actually not that important in the Israeli archaeology, even though they have important role, a limited but important role in the Bible, but not in the archaeology of specifically of Israel or the land of Israel. But they do have important role in the archaeology and mythology of the Near East. And the Near East, the cultures of the Near East are also things that strongly resonate with my own history and my own understanding of reality. So, I promise I will speak about, I'll elaborate more on the Ziggurat of Ur. For now, it's going to be just kind of like a title for this series. So, this will be the prelude, and shortly I will start with, I would say, the first episode, which will start, as I said, in Yanina during the 1920s.